You see they're dry. You see there's no marrow in the bone. You see they're scattered all over the valley. They ain't even full skeletons. I mean, the bones are scattered all over the valley. They're just bones. But answer me a question, Ezekiel. Can these bones live? Ezekiel answers the only way he knows how to answer. Lord, you know. Critical race theory was born out of critical legal theory. Am I teaching y'all something today? There emerged two common beliefs linking all critical race theories. First, white supremacy has subordinated black people and other people of color. That's just a fact. How in the world are you going to fight against that being taught in any school? White supremacy has subordinated black people and other people of color. That's a fact. Why don't you want that to be taught in school? You let your schools teach us that Columbus discovered America. That's a lie. You let your schools teach us that George Washington couldn't tell a lie. That's a lie. You let your schools teach us that some slave owners were beneficent and good slave owners. There were no good slave owners. Anybody who owned people was evil. That's a lie. You let your schools teach us that Abraham Lincoln was good for Negroes. No, Abraham Lincoln was trying to save the Union. And Abe Lincoln himself said if he could save the Union and keep black people in chains, he would do it. That's a lie. Come on, somebody. You let them teach us about a white Jesus. You let them teach us that Native Americans were the aggressors. Come on, somebody. That white folk had a manifest destiny and that the Pilgrims were good to Native Americans. That's a lie. All day, every day, you let them teach us lies. All throughout my history in school, I was taught lies. But you got a problem with critical race theory because it teaches the truth that white supremacy has subordinated black people and people of color. The right to bear arms. Let me just back up a little bit and let me take you on back to the late 1960s when Ronald Reagan was the governor of California. And they were oppressing black folk, and a group of men and women known as the Black Panther Party decided that they were going to defend the rights of black folk. And the Black Panthers decided that the Second Amendment wasn't just for white folk. So they strapped themselves with guns and showed up at the Capitol in California. And when they saw them Negroes with guns, come on, somebody. That's why I say if you ever really want to get gun laws changed, just strap all these Negroes up. They'll change them laws before the week is over. When the Black Panthers, watch this, I want you to read, the California legislator passed what was called the Mulford Act. It was a gun control act that decided who could get guns, who couldn't get guns, what could be in your background, what couldn't be in your background. It was the first time in history that the National Rifle Association, the NRA, supported restrictive gun legislation, all because black folk had the nerve to get strapped. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, go get strapped. Amen, somebody. Y'all gonna say Bishop told us to get strapped. I said it. Go get strapped. It just got real quiet up in here. But y'all already know I'm a triple P. Amen. Y'all know what a triple P is, right? A pistol packing preacher. Amen, somebody.
But the end of the road has changed. The being in the road would be the end of the road if you refuse to change. a little higher, reach a little higher, dig a little deeper, dig a little deeper, go a little further, go a little further. Come on, come on, come on, reach a little higher, come on, yeah. Dig a little deeper, dig a little deeper, go a little further, go a little further. Come on, but don't stop. The essence of life is growth, but the essence of growth is change. The being in the road will be the end of the road if you refuse to change. Your life will never change until you get disgusted with where you are.
Peace, Facebook. Peace to the gram. Peace, Twitter. Peace, YouTube. Peace, everybody. It's President's Day. It's Legalized Murderer Day.
So break the cycle that doing enough is simply good enough. You only get out what you put in, so don't settle for the crumbs when you can have a whole.
Tell somebody Bishop is on the air. Rep your city, rep your town.
Reach a little higher, dig a little deeper, don't stop, come on. Reach a little higher, dig a little deeper.
Good morning to you.
Don't stop.
Good morning. What's up, Graham?
So you gotta break the routine of trying to beat the system. Manipulators will always try to bypass the process for the quick progress. There are no shortcuts to success. There are no elevators to the top. You gotta take it one step at a time.
All right, all right, all right.
Allowing others to get into your head and control who you are and where you're going. You see, when you're about the positive, you're going to always have haters. But don't let your haters push you down. Let your haters push you forward to the next.
Man, it's been a trying day already.
Don't perceive them to be something else that they're not. See, a zebra does not change his stripes. So you got to keep pushing yourself to the next level. Yeah, there you go. Come on. Get a little deeper. Come on. Yeah. Go a little further. Go a little further. Come on. Don't stop. Come on. Yeah. Reach a little higher. Reach a little higher. Dig a little deeper. Dig a little deeper. Go a little further. Go a little further. Come on. Come on. Come on. You got to understand the greatness is the nature that you were born out of.
All right, let's get this. Let's get this.
Without hard work and dedication. Greatness says more about who you are and what you expect for yourself. And greatness will always attract greatness. Show me your friends and I'll show you your future. You're just a step away. You're just a step away. You're just a step away. Don't ever give up. Come on. You're just a step away. You're almost there. Come on. You got to push yourself beyond your limitations. You see, there's no mountain too high.
Keep on moving.
You can go where you want to go. It's all in the power of your imagination. You can see the invisible. You can do the impossible. So stretch yourself. Take yourself to the next level. Come on, come on, come on. Reach a little higher. Dig a little deeper. Go a little further. Come on, come on, come on. Don't stop. Come on. Reach a little higher. Dig a little deeper. Go a little further. Don't stop. Don't stop. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Come on. Blessings are coming your way. Go a little further. Don't stop. Don't stop until you get your dream. Don't stop. Get your dream. Until you get your dream. Come on. Don't stop until you get your dream. Don't stop.
All right, all right, all right. Good morning. Rep your city, rep your town. What's up, Book?
I look in the mirror and I like what I see. A strong, beautiful black woman staring back at me. One who's seen a lot of pain and had her share of sorrow, but who never gave up hope for a brighter tomorrow. I've been lied to, cheated on, stolen from and hit, But it just made me stronger, and I refused to quit. That's right. And though I've been tempted, I refused to stoop to their level. Don't go down. I rose above that nonsense and made a liar of the devil. All right now. The devil who said I wasn't good enough, cute enough, or worthy of love, I kicked his butt with divine power from above. Power that says I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me and brought me out of darkness so that I could
Happy
see
Monday.
that I'm smart, I'm beautiful, I'm a child of the King. Abundant love from me he came to bring. Oh yes, when I look in the mirror, I love what I see. She's looking good. That strong, beautiful black woman, that woman is me.
90.7 WTCC. Good morning and welcome to the Spoken Word. I'm your host, Bishop Talbert Swan II. And as usual, we'll be telling it like it is through cultural idioms and nuances that shape the order, ethos, and chaos of the African American experience. Words have their own vitality. They shape their own consciousness and create their own context for interpreting social and spiritual reality. The spoken word contains the power to reshape the landscape of society. It is 6 minutes past the hour of 9 a.m. And I want to thank Mr. Kenneth Barnett for bringing us up until the 9 o'clock hour with the promise. You can hear the promise every Monday morning from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., bringing you the best in gospel music. Good way to start out your Monday morning. Great way to start out your week. Well, it's a holiday today. My one school-age child that's left is home. Well, they actually have the whole week off. But they're celebrating President's Day. We're going to talk about that today. President's Day. I call it Murderer's Day. I know that's a little provocative. Some of y'all getting sensitive, even you black folk getting sensitive. Don't be talking about my president. Yeah, it's borne out even today. Even with the current president who is endorsing genocide. And we'll talk about it. 413-736-2781. I want to give a happy birthday shout out to my daughter Shannon, aka Shampoo, my baby girl who's all the way in Dallas, Texas. Today is her born day. Let me see. How old is Shannon today? This is what, 2024? That would make her 36. You know, I gotta go back trying to remember now. That makes her 36 years old. Good morning, Dad. I see my dad on the line, and yes, I'm playing my sister. I play her every radio show that I have. We play a little bit of Rhonda Swan. So yes, y'all throw in there. Shout out my daughter Shannon. It's her 36th birthday today. So y'all say happy birthday to Shannon today. 413-736-2781. I want to talk about President's Day. Every year on the third Monday in February, workers across the country are given the day off in recognition of President's Day, a federal holiday that was originally established to celebrate George Washington's birthday. And I want to talk about that. But I need y'all to do me a favor and rep your city, rep your town, and let me know where you are chiming in from, what part of the country, what part of the world. Let me see where y'all are coming in from on the gram. Also want to remind you that today at 6:30 p.m., if you're in the 413, make your way to the Spring of Hope Church of God in Christ. Dr. Tamar Bryant, who is the past president of the American Psychological Association, Deep Sister, psychologist, theologian, a professor at Pepperdine University, um, is going to be our special guest at our Lift Every Voice lecture series. So at 6:30 p.m. at the Spring of Hope Church of God in Christ. You don't want to miss it. We got song by Springfield Songbird, Miss Vanessa Ford. We've got dance by the one and only Legacy Moy. We got spoken word by AJ Saint, Aaron St. Louis. So we got a lot of talent kicking off. We have a special awards presentation and our keynote lecture by Dr. Tamar Bryant. You don't want to miss tonight. And then on Thursday, we got Candace Marie Benbow, noted award-winning author. Check out her book, Red Lipstick Theology. She's going to be our guest lecturer on Thursday night, and we've got much more talent coming on Thursday as well. Then next week on the 27th, on Tuesday, Domingo Guyton talking about hip hop, a culture of vision and voice. You don't want to miss that lecture. You really don't. And then on the 29th, Reverend Mike McBride is talking about shifting the culture of violence, talking about gun violence, etc. So this week and next week, our Lift Every Voice lecture series, 4 dynamic, renowned speakers that we are bringing to the Springfield area, and you need to be there. You need to be there. Check it out. Tell somebody that it is happening right here in the field. Y'all always talking about what don't happen in the field. Well, support what does. 413-736-2781. Let me see. I saw some shout outs on the gram with telling me, hey, KK, were telling me what they, where they were from. Greetings from South Africa. All right. South Africa in the place. Boston, Massachusetts in the building was one. Yeah, Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan is in the building. All right. Toronto, Canada, Quebec, Canada, Johannesburg, South Africa is in the building. Houston, Texas is at Kansas City. Raleigh, North Carolina. Charlotte, North Carolina is in the building. Chicago is in the building. Union, New Jersey is in the building. I see you, H-Town. I see you, H-Town. Y'all always in it. Greenville, South Carolina is in the building. Another Raleigh, North Carolina. Another Houston. Another Houston. Houston rolls up in here deep all the time. So if I ever move, I'm going to have to move to Houston. Springfield, Massachusetts in the building. I see you, Lady Ayanna Crawford. Rep your city, rep your town. Y'all give me some encouragement too, because today started out rough already. Getting my Starbucks, and the warning goes off in my car. Check my tire pressure, and my passenger side right tire is going flat. On my way to the radio station. The one good thing is that I have run flat tires, so it was no rush in going somewhere to get it fixed, because I can ride on the run flats. And the problem with run flats is they're expensive. The last time I got a run flat, one of my tires replaced, it was about $350 a tire. So they ain't cheap. They ain't cheap. But I made it to the studio. I got to do a stop to do an interview after this, and then I'm on my way to Town Fair Tire to get this tire taken care of so I can be in place for the lecture series on tonight. Montgomery, Alabama. Good morning. D Nice from DC. Hey, D Nice from DC. Yes, Springfield, Mass in the building. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I see you again, Springfield. All right, about time the field decide to step up and be represented. All right. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. All right, 413-736-2781. Uh let's see. I hear you, brother Johnny. I will speak to that issue. 413-736-2781. As a matter of fact, I sent a letter out on that um, just yesterday. Good morning. You're on the air. You're not on the air. All right. 413-736-2781. Yeah, let me do that first, and then we'll talk more about this President's Day. Situation in Southwick. This is for those in the 413, those local, the 413. Southwick, Massachusetts, Southwick Tolland Granville Regional School District. At the Southwick Regional High School, there's a young black young lady, who has been being harassed based upon her race at the school. Oftentimes people want to tell us that racism is dying because the younger generation isn't like their parents. And yet and still, we learn time and time again that they're just like their parents, that they get that their racist attitudes get passed down from generation to generation. And so we have to deal with. I dealt with it when my son was on UMass's campus. Matter of fact, they did a feature article in the Boston Globe featuring my son and I, juxtaposing what I went through on campus 30 some odd years ago and what he was going through on campus at that moment 3 decades later. The same stuff. You can't tell me racism is dying when the children of the students that I went to school with were on the campus carrying out the same racist activities as their parents were carrying out on campus. And we see that example in this Southwick situation, where this young black lady is being harassed at that school, being called the N-word. And then the white students had the nerve to have, in an online chat section, an auction, a slave auction of the black students, where they were bidding on purchasing the black students, $2, $4, etc. And this young lady was one of the black students that they were bidding on in this simulated slave auction. White students in Southwick having a slave auction during Black History Month. Yeah. That's what's going on here in Western Massachusetts. Not Mississippi, Massissippi. All right? Right here in good old liberal, progressive Massachusetts. This is what's happening. They're having slave auctions during Black History Month at Southwick School. So we're going to be dealing with this issue. Look out for more on this issue. We will be organizing an action if we don't get the correct response. So I have responded to the superintendent of schools, the principal of Southwick Regional High School, the chief of police of Southwick, and the State Department of Education. And if they think this is something they're going to brush under the rug, which they are trying to do, They got the wrong answer. So there are several of us that are working on this, myself, Minister Johnny, and others who have been alerted to this situation. And we're just not going to have our black students being harassed and bullied and played with like this. And we're not going to have the powers that be, the police department, the school itself, brushing it under the rug, telling the parents that they're overreacting. No, their students deserve to be able to go to a learning environment without being racially harassed and bullied. Period. There is no overreaction. And it won't be swept under the rug. 413-736-2781, 413-736-2781. As I stated, President's Day started out as a celebration, and you're aging yourself because I'm old enough to remember when President's Day was about the birthday of George Washington, and then George Washington and Abe Lincoln, before it got expanded to include all presidents. So yeah, I'm aging myself. But it started out to celebrate George Washington's birthday, and later expanded to recognize presidents more broadly. Now, we know when we grew up and when our children came up in school, and now our grandchildren, schools have this special focus on figures like George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. The stores offer these, President's Day blowout sales. And it's easy for most folks to let this holiday kind of just slip by unnoticed. But let me suggest to you that it's important that we recognize it for what it is. All right? It's a celebration of slaveholders, rapists, murderers, war criminals. It's a celebration of a position and the men who have held it, mired in a history of slavery, racism, genocide, and imperialism. U.S. presidents are responsible for some of the worst brutality in modern history. And so it's worthwhile to pause and to examine some of the worst presidents and their most heinous acts throughout history. As opposed to letting them whitewash and glamorize the presidency and celebrate men who don't need to be celebrated, especially without telling the truth about what they did and how they lived. I mean, the institution of slavery loomed large over nearly the first 100 years of American presidential history. And almost all of the early presidents were strong supporters of slavery and actively took part in owning and trading Black people. Even the ones who expressed these lofty ideas of liberty, freedom, and equality. In the hands of the so-called founding fathers and early presidents, these ideals of freedom, justice, and equality came wrapped up in the brutality of slavery, all of the massive profits that it brought about. More than a quarter of all presidents have owned slaves. George Washington, they tell you in school, couldn't tell a lie. It was I who chopped down the cherry tree. They laud him as a general and a war hero and, the founding father of the nation. And they rarely will ever tell you that he held 300 slaves at his Mount Vernon plantation. That he held enslaved black people before, during, and after his presidency. It said that his dentures were made out of the teeth of enslaved people. This is your George Washington who couldn't tell a lie. He couldn't tell a lie, but he could own a black person. And I know y'all talk about Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson owned at least 175 enslaved black people at one time, and over 600 during the course of his lifetime. That's right. Jefferson owned 600 enslaved black people and had many children with enslaved women that he raped. And then check this out, enslaved the children, his own children. And white folks have tried to glamorize Thomas Jefferson's rape culture and tried to make it a love story. Yeah, look it up. They try to tell you he was in love with Sally Hemings. Sally Hemings didn't have a choice. She was a slave. So she couldn't give consent. He raped her and then enslaved his own children. Yes, Thomas Jefferson is well known to be a rapist, although history and popular culture have reconstituted the narrative of this relationship. It was rape. Sally Hemings gave him 6 enslaved children. She wasn't his mistress. She wasn't his jump off. She wasn't his side chick. By law, she was property. Okay? Let's not get it twisted. Female slaves had no legal right to refuse unwanted sexual advances by their owners or any white man for that matter. There's nothing romantic about Sally Hemings and Jefferson's so-called relationship. You can't have a relationship where consent is impossible. And if someone dared to dissent, it carried the most violent and brutal consequences. So let's just keep it a buck for what it really was. This is who they want us to celebrate on President's Day. Amir Hampton, you're in the space. 413-736-2781 is the number if you want to chime in on the conversation. Good morning, sis.
Good morning, Bishop. Hope all is well.
All is well.
I'm going to give you some positive energy. You said that you started your day off kind of in the Mondays, so to speak. So positive energy go to you. And also, you said your daughter had a happy birthday today. Had a birthday? Well,
yes.
Happy birthday to your daughter as well.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And to your title, President's Day is a celebration of murders. Yes. I was just finishing up, and it was this space is on time because I was just finishing up the video from EdPost. There's 3 gentlemen that do what is called Freedom Friday. Every Friday they speak about, things going on in culture, pop culture, but they always have a tendency to try to educate us on this hour YouTube. So they did one Friday, and it says what they don't want you to know about the U.S. presidents. And to Mr. Elmeki, excuse me, what he said was that President's Day should be known as Oppressors Day, which I agree. Yes. So I encourage everyone to visit EdPost on YouTube, and I put it in your purple pill below in your chat. But what this is that what is the significance of the American presidency to the Black community? So this will highlight the dark history of presidents and the importance of teaching the complexities of American history. Their discussion, they do teach on the luxury of ignorance and the concept of dual consciousness. So Mr. Chris, Sharif, and Ishmael, the 3 gentlemen I was explaining earlier, they explore the American consciousness and hypocrisy, the challenges of parenting and teaching the ethics, the mythology and reality of the American presidency, and the responsibility of the governed. So their takeaway from this video is that President's Day should be an opportunity for truth-telling and teaching the contents of the day. Teaching the dark history of the presidents is essential to understanding the complexities of American history. And what blew my mind, and I didn't know this, that dual consciousness is the coexistence of 2 distinct mental states. It is a psychological condition that reflects the American problem. And then they state that the cure for the dual consciousness lies in resisting it through education, information, and connecting the dots. Being conscious of one's own hypocrisies is the first step toward change. But great topic, and can't wait to hear the rest of it. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you, sis. 413-736-2781. W.E.B. Du Bois talked about dual consciousness, how Black people had to live in America that refused to peel back the layers or pull back the veil to see really how Black people have to live on a day-to-day basis. And that's still true today, that they want to deny the real lived experiences of Black people. And unfortunately, Black folks, in order to make it in this so-called American society, sometimes have to pretend that they don't go through the things that they go through on a daily basis. 413-736-2781. If you're in the space and you want to chime in on the conversation, put your request in and we'll get you up on the stage. I left off talking about Thomas Jefferson, but we can go on and we can talk about James Madison, James Monroe, Andrew Jackson, William Henry Harrison, John Tyler, James Polk, Zachary Taylor. They all owned and enslaved Black people while they were in office as president, ranging from a few dozen to up to 200 enslaved Black people. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Bishop. How are you this morning, sir?
I'm good. You?
I'm good. I've always maintained that as Black folks, we should win an Oscar every year because we are the greatest actors since we've been here and changed as slaves. We have to act every day when we're in front of white folks. When we're working for them, when we're around them, because I've experienced this with my mom, and I've experienced this with others. When we talk amongst ourselves, we get ghetto sometimes. But then with the switcher of light, when we talk with white folks, we change our whole narrative, attitude, and character. So yes, we've been faking it for a minute. And the currency of the money is all these presidents, they are criminals. So, it's almost like a losing battle. I just wanted to mention that to you.
All right. Appreciate your call. 413-736-2781. You want to chime in on this conversation about President's Day, or if you want to chime in on the situation in Southwick here in the 413 with our dear sister being harassed. And we're talking about presidents that owned slaves, and here we got white students at Southwick Regional High School having virtual slave auctions during Black History Month in 2024. Slave auctions, auctioning off their fellow Black students. Wow. 413-736-2781. Martin Van Buren owned slaves. Andrew Johnson owned slaves. Before his presidency and while he was governor of Tennessee. Matter of fact, it was Andrew Johnson who convinced Abraham Lincoln to exempt his state from the Emancipation Proclamation. Did you hear what I said? To exempt, because he wanted to hold on to his slaves. So he convinced President Lincoln, don't include Tennessee. Y'all didn't know that. Y'all didn't know Tennessee was not included, even though it was a slave-holding state. It was not included as part of the Emancipation Proclamation. Ulysses S. Grant held slaves. Fillmore didn't own slaves, but he signed the Fugitive Slave Act, which compelled the federal government to return fugitive slaves to their so-called slave masters. Enslaved people who had found freedom in the North and other places were subjected to another form of terror in the Fugitive Slave Act. And I know y'all love Honest Abe. And call him the liberator or the emancipator. I spoke at the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington last summer, and we stood in the shadow of the Lincoln Memorial. And before I could kick off my remarks, I had to remark about the shadow of who we were standing in front of and the hypocrisy surrounding Abe Lincoln, who is often praised as one of the greatest presidents in American history. As popular history goes, he led the country to emancipate enslaved people. But that's selective memory. That's selective revisionist history of Lincoln's history regarding slavery. In August 1862, this is 1 year prior to signing the Emancipation Proclamation. Remember what Lincoln said. He said, if I could save the Union without freeing any slaves, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that. Emancipation was just a military strategy for Lincoln. As a matter of fact, the Emancipation Proclamation only granted freedom to slaves in rebelling states, which is why Andrew Johnson could convince him to exempt Tennessee, a slaveholding state, from the Emancipation Proclamation. Okay? It didn't free slaves from states that were members of the Union. only those that were members of the Confederacy. And yes, there were Union states that held slaves. And for many years, Abe Lincoln was an active member of the American Colonization Society, and he advocated for colonization as a means to tackle the problem of slavery. Take and resettle former slaves in the Caribbean and in Central America. Let's colonize them. He believed it was necessary to create a place where Black people could be moved to solve the problem of slavery in the U.S. But he always held the concept that white people were superior to any other race. It underscored his deep-seated racism. He was hardly the father of liberation or the great emancipator. But this is what we celebrate on President's Day. This is who we celebrate. Let me get Wesley in the space. You got the microphone, Wesley. You got a good name, too. That's my middle name. Good morning.
Hey, hi. How are you, sir?
I'm good. You?
I'm good, thanks. I think that the title of this space should be President's Day is a celebration of war criminals.
Yeah.
Let me explain why. We don't even have to go far back in history. I mean, just look at George W. Bush. In 2003, he told a lie that Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. So what happened was the United States Army went to Iraq. They didn't find any weapons of mass destruction. So rather than pull out from the country, they continued to torture the people there. And by 2011, when the war ended, about 1.2 million people were already dead. So putting this into context, we can clearly see that Bush is a war criminal. So for me, it's very confusing as to why charges have not been laid on this guy. Like, why hasn't the ICC, the International Criminal Court, why have they not laid any charges? I don't understand why that's not happened yet. And I also don't understand why the International Court of Justice, why they have not laid any charges on this war criminal called George W. Bush. And what's even more sad is how the Iraq war cost the United States $1.9 trillion. Now that's money that should have went to reparations. See, what happens is that European Americans don't want to give African Americans reparations, but they don't have a problem with spending 1.9 trillion fighting in Iraq. They don't have a problem spending 2.3 trillion fighting in Afghanistan. But when it comes to compensating African Americans, then we see European Americans, they seem to have a problem with that. So it's one of those things that just don't really make sense, but it's actually happening. Now, with Obama, he's also another war criminal, okay? Because with him, in the last year of his presidency, 2016, he ordered the United States to drop 26,171 bombs on 7 different countries. So he's also a war criminal. It's no different than George Bush. It's no different than Bill Clinton and all these other war criminals that we see coming out from the United States. You know, so again, I repeat that President's Day is a celebration of murderers. It is a celebration of war criminals. It's a celebration of people who are who want to spend money on wars, but they're not interested in spending money on economic justice for African Americans. They don't want to pay compensation for Jim Crow. They don't want to pay compensation for slavery. They don't want to reform the prison system in the United States so that mass incarceration could end. So, you know, these people, you know, these presidents that we've had in the United States, going as far back as 1776, you know, they've all been nothing but war criminals. So, I mean, even Joe Biden, you can put him on that list because he's supporting the Zionist Israel. He's supporting that regime over there. So it's just war criminals after war criminals. And I think it's sad. Maybe it's about time that the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice, they have to maybe start looking at these United States presidents and actually do something to them, you know, charge them for some sort of war crime so that, you know, we can end the bloodshed that these war criminals have been causing on the planet since 1776. Thank you.
All right. Appreciate your call. Absolutely. It is a celebration of war criminals. No doubt about it. And I mean, it goes back to Native American genocide. America was founded on the removal and genocide of indigenous people under the belief that this was some kind of manifest destiny, meaning there would never be enough room for Native Americans and white settlers in the United States, and that God ordained for white settlers to have this land. So in effect, colonizers, matter of fact, I don't even like using the word settlers. They were actually invaders. And they attempted to wipe out indigenous people through the most brutal actions and policies of violent genocide. Andrew Jackson was perhaps the most brutal of them all. He signed what was called the Indian Removal Act that authorized the president to remove indigenous people in the Southeast United States to federal land west of the Mississippi so that white invaders could farm the territory and make a fortune growing cotton. And these tribes were forcibly removed by the United States government. This was sanctioned by the government in a march to the west that later became known as the Trail of Tears. Thousands of Native Americans died from exposure, starvation, disease, all of that. So from the beginning of time, U.S. presidents have been war criminals and still are up until the present one that is in office right now. That's a reality. Candle, you're in the space. 413-736-2781 is the number here. Good morning, Candle. You got the microphone. Okay, while Candle is getting the connection going, I'll continue. Truman as well. Truman's presidency was the beginning of termination policies against indigenous people. A set of policies that sought to forcibly assimilate indigenous people into mainstream American society under the belief that they should abandon their traditional lifestyles. And if they didn't, they had to face dire consequences. And I mean, these types of policies continued under Eisenhower, under John F. Kennedy, and Native Americans lost their lands. Tribal members were stripped of their status. They were brutal and genocidal policies that displaced indigenous people, took away their land, and left them in small corners, or what we call reservations here in the U.S. Candle, you got the microphone. Let me see if you can get on. Good morning. All right, Candle's having trouble, so we'll move on to someone else. If you want to get in on the space, put your request in. If you want to call in, 413-736-2781. We can talk about the Dakota Access Pipeline. Since our last caller was talking about Barack Obama. The Dakota Access Pipeline was built with the permission of Obama's administration. And it's an example of the ongoing oppression and exploitation of native lands. And it was only due to the activism of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, as well as thousands of other people who mobilized in solidarity that the Dakota Access Pipeline was halted. Then it was restarted by the Trump administration. So let's be real when we talk about President's Day. Colonization, imperialism, all of that comes with U.S. presidents. During his presidency, President Monroe put forth the Monroe Doctrine, which was an act of U.S. foreign policy written in 1823, stating that any inference or attempt to recolonize any part of America by Europe would be viewed as an act of aggression and would obligate the U.S. to intervene. It was okay for them, though, to come here and commit genocide on indigenous people and to steal their land. But then all of a sudden, if somebody else decided to do something, it'd be a completely different story. During the Trump administration, some of you might remember John Bolton, when he was the national security advisor, he proudly proclaimed that the Monroe Doctrine is alive and well when he announced sanctions against Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua. These are the men who get a holiday. U.S. presidents who have a long history of supporting and spearheading coups abroad to topple governments they don't agree with. Patrice Lumumba in the Congo, assassinated. That's the U.S. Manuel Noriega, that's the U.S. Muammar Gaddafi, that's the U.S. Let's not forget, before the U.S. went into Iraq, as our brother so eloquently talked about, looking for non-existent weapons of mass destruction, let's not forget, before Bush went into Iraq, it was his daddy, Bush Sr., who recruited Saddam Hussein when he was over the CIA. Yeah, Bush Sr. recruited Saddam Hussein. Bush Sr. used to go golfing with Manuel Noriega. So the U.S. is real good on it knows that people in the U.S., we operate on sound bites, and that you can tell the people whatever you want them to hear. And they don't study history, so they don't connect the dots. When Mobutu Sese Sese, who took over the Congo after the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, when he finally was ousted, the U.S. media went ablaze and talked about the history of this brutal dictator. 30 some odd years, how with an iron hand he ruled the Congo. At that time, it was called Zaire. It's now the Democratic Republic of the Congo again. How he ruled Zaire, how brutal he was. This was all over the U.S. media. And those of us who study history, we're looking at all of the news outlets CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, BET, even the black news, and saying, what are y'all talking about? Mobutu was put in place by the U.S. government. It was the U.S. government that orchestrated the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, and the U.S. government sanctioned the propping up of Mobutu. They put him in place. 30 years later, when he's gone, they want to celebrate the demise of a dictator. But they know that y'all don't know nothing about history, so you didn't even connect that 30 years prior to that the U.S. government was the ones who put it in place. Watch this. When war was going on in Afghanistan, and all of the United States media was talking about how terrible the Taliban was. Y'all remember that, right? How horrible the Taliban was. What the U.S. government didn't tell you, what the news media didn't tell you, was it was the U.S. government that supported the Taliban and put them in place. That there never would have been a Taliban in place in Afghanistan if it wasn't for the support of the United States government. Y'all got short memories. There never would have been a Saddam Hussein in place in Iraq if he didn't have the support of the U.S. government. So the U.S. props up so-called dictators and brutal people, and then when it's convenient, they want to distance themselves from them. And see, the U.S. ain't never had a problem with dictators and all that stuff anyway, as long as they do their bidding, as long as they do what's in the best interest of the U.S. It's when they stop allowing the U.S. to dictate to them that the U.S. turns on them. As long as Saddam Hussein was doing what the U.S. wanted him to do, they had no problem with Saddam Hussein. They had no problem with him. None whatsoever. I'll give you another one that y'all didn't know. When Russia was backing forces in Afghanistan, and there was someone who was fighting against those forces by the name of Osama bin Laden, guess who the United States was supporting? Yeah, they were supporting Osama bin Laden and his forces against the Russian forces in Afghanistan. But all y'all know is what the U.S. told you about Osama bin Laden after the 9/11 attacks. Brutal dictator, brutal terrorist, all of that. They never told you that Osama bin Laden got power and influence by the backing of the U.S. government. And because y'all don't watch no other news, you don't see what other credible news sources outside of the U.S. have to say about foreign policy. Y'all just believe whatever Fox or CNN tells y'all. Come on, folks, read, learn, study, know the history of your own country. So today is Murderers' Day. Today is Oppressors' Day. Today is War Criminals' Day. Today is Slaveholders' Day. Today is a day to celebrate rapists. Let's just keep it a buck. Let's keep it a buck. Because that's what the U.S. presidency has been. It's not about altruism and freedom and justice and equality. It's about imperialism and colonization, power and money and control. and all of that, I got to get out your way. Listen, once again, tonight, you don't want to miss tonight. Dr. Tamar Bryant is in the city. She's going to be with us in our Lift Every Voice lecture series at 6:30 p.m. We're going to hear song by the songbird Vanessa Ford, spoken word by AJ St. Aaron St. Louis. We are going to have dance by Legacy Moore. We're going to have an award presentation. It's going to be a wonderful night. If you missed Linda Sarsour on Thursday, you just missed it. I got to get out your way. Mrs. Cynthia Butler. She got the same name as my wife. She's in the studio. She's coming up next with mid-morning jazz and great black music. So don't touch the dial. Just keep it locked right there. Ain't no need to go nowhere. I got to go get this flat tire fixed and stuff. Y'all pray for me today. Started out as a rough day. But we're going to plug along. I'm out of here. Until the next time I talk to you and you talk to me, always remember, God loves you, and so do I. Peace and blessings.
Morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, this one is for all the brothers that